This conference will now be recorded.
Right, so we were talking about yesterday. Oh, I did not destroy it. This should not be done. You should not forget. One day is enough to get you unnecessary bill. Yeah. Anyway, I can use the same VM. So we created a VM and the VM is running already. So if I go to the VM, this could have been scaled up. Yesterday I was scaling up this VM from 1 CPU to 2 CPU or 4 GB RAM, right? 2 CPUs to 4 GB RAM. Now if I try to connect to this VM, I can connect. I need one more VM to talk about a few more things in parallel. So let's deploy. We will use some junk names here onwards. You know the convention, right? First, the server should indicate the environment, the location, project, and that kind of thing. We are following it. You might go to different environment, they might follow different naming conventions, but there should be a naming convention where you can easily understand what is the purpose of the server and all that. Right, so I'm going to make this as SQL VM02. Here, I'll claim the availability set. We have the availability set, right? The same availability set I'm going to claim so that you'll get the numbers. And here I'm going to choose. We will talk about Unix flavors also. We're going to dedicate one class for that. Windows Server 2019, Data Center Generation 2. These are the two. These are the VMs we are using it as a part of the production workloads. So I'm using the same VM here also. This is a default account. You must have to add this account. Without this, we cannot progress with the VM creation. And there's inbound anyway, I'll cover in detail. And if you come to disk performance tiers, here I'm going to cover. There are three disk performance tiers we do have. For all pre-prods, go with the standard hard disk, which comes at the lower cost. For non-critical production servers, there are production servers which you see the very less load. So go with the standard hard disk. If you see the database are bigger and the load is more, we need to go to the standard SSDs. Premium SSD something is you cannot go directly. You have to take the approval for that. This will cost you the almost double the charges of your VM. In fact, okay. So premium SSDs you should not choose ideally all the time. Standard SSDs are enough for the production, mostly enough. I'm going to talk about this, the kind of IO each disk tier will support. First, I'll go with the standard hard disk, and I'm not adding any disks here for some reason. We'll add it later on. I'm creating the VM straight away. Just failed. So what is missing? Piece series is complaining about, and the network maybe. Picked up what it wanted then. Right. Right. This VM, one CPU, 1 GB RAM. I need to go to two CPUs at least to have better performance. So it is costing you 3 rupees, 80 paisa, roughly 4 rupees. You use it for 2 hours also, you get 8 rupees maximum. So 8 rupees into 30, example, you are continuously running every day 2 hours a VM, assume a case, and an average. So 30 into 82, 40 rupees. So roughly that's how you have to manage it, right? Do the practice and destroy right after it. That's something you have to follow it.
So by destroying Ravinder, so like what we have to do, we have to delete it. Like what? Can you tell
Yeah,
those steps also?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
today I'm going to discuss. At the end of the
Okay.
class, I'll destroy everything. So all it will clean up automatically.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So now on the first VM, if you look at here, we do have one drive only, which is operating system drive. If you look at here, there is one more drive called a temporary drive. This is drive is called as caching drive. Caching drive work like a like a Windows address extension, right? So WAE, actually WAE, we will call WAE in the Windows terms. So what exactly it mean? So if you go to environment variable right here, this drive will be used as caching drive. It's like a RAM. The portion of the drive will be used as a RAM. Go to settings. If you go to advanced, it is saying that a paging file is an area on the hard disk that Windows uses as if it were a RAM. So it has 4 GB RAM, it using 1 GB and the hard disk as a RAM. It is a SSD drive by default, premium SSD drive. And every VM you get the premium SSD drive, temporary drive at free of cost. You don't have to pay for it. Okay. So every machine will have this configuration. You can change the value to higher if you want, but don't change it. The higher, the worse the performance of the system can become. It is like a buffer zone for the operating system. If you go to the machine, you have the 4 GB RAM. If 4 GB RAM fully occupied, so what it does, it will move the data temporarily to that WAE kind of thing. So you have a RAM here, you have the hard disk here. So a portion of the hard disk is treated as a RAM. When the RAM is under absolutely pressure 100%, it will move some data here at the when it is under 100% pressure. So still, see, when the RAM is goes 100%, still machine is operable. The reason being is only this, you have some hard disk space where it is giving some breathing space, and then when it is required, it will call back the data. So it uses as a swapping memory, not direct memory. And the system, in fact, in every system you will have it. If I go to my laptop also, okay, you will find this everywhere. In fact, you go to here, okay, setting here, here, you see this one. You see this one, paging file is an area on the disk the Windows uses as if it were a RAM. So it is using roughly 5 GB RAM, 5 GB disk as a RAM. Because my machine is high capacity device, which this get calculated by the operating system itself. Okay, you don't give this value. If the operating system is taking based on the disks you have, the capacity of the disk, it will calculate on its own. Let it take. It is algorithmic number the machine will take. But the problem is you should not give the higher values on your own. So if you take it about, I have 32 GB RAM, 2 TB SSD drive. That's why it picked up good storage here as a paging drive. Okay. So you might see the lower values. The lower anyway is good. The operating system is responsible for how much it is going to, pick up as a WAE extension address spacing. It is up to, it look for the disk capacity, the IO operations and all that, then it will keep the value there. You don't have to worry about. But what exactly the temporary drive is, a caching drive given to you. But it is given 8 GB, it is only claiming 1 GB. You can use it for your purposes, but whatever you keep it here, if the VM is reallocated, everything will be lost. It is a temporary drive all the time. You should not keep any valuable data in this drive. If you keep it, you might lose it. You will lose it if you deallocate anyway. So I wanted to add more drives to this VM. So how do I add? As a SQL server, you must have data drive, log drive, temp drive, install drive, and all that, right? So you go to the server on which you wanted to add the drives. Okay. Then you click on the disks. Okay. Then I'm going to add the disk. I'm going to call this as a data disk, data underscore disk. Always use the server name before the drive name all the time. This is a mandatory thing we will follow, because when you have to identify the disk in the pool of disk, you need to know the name of the server. It is mandatory. So this is a data disk. I'm going with the standard hard disk first. I'll scale up to premium disk also right later on. So I'm going with the 200 GB capacity data drive, okay, underscore log drive, log something, whatever you can keep it. And here I'll keep it 100 GB. And here one more drive I'm going to create. So a VM size can support a limited number of drives, in fact. Okay. So you cannot just go and create a number of drives. This will support 4 drives. How do I say that? I'll tell you that. We have a list anyway. So once I created 4 drives, I cannot create any more. Okay. So install drive, and here also I'm picking it a standard hard disk. Then I'm going to make this as a 50 GB. So before I save this, if I go to the VM, if I go to the, like a disk management here, computer management, s- okay, under disk management, if I go and check, there is only C drive as of now. Don't count this temporary drive. This is a one C drive, you have it. You don't see any drive. As soon as I save in the portal, like I went into the server, I added the drives, the capacities, I'm saving it. As soon as you save it, it will display. It will display the server in a unformatted drives. You don't find the drives here. Even they added it in the cloud, they got saved. So you have to format it to make them online. Right, it got updated. If you come back here, you don't find the drives yet. You don't find. You will find the drives here. See, you'll find the drives here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to format the drives one after the other. Here it is a data drive. Right. First you need to bring it online. When you are you have to initialize in fact. So when you are initializing, there are two formats during the installation. What is MBR? MBR drive can grow up to maximum 2 TB. No, it cannot grow beyond 2 TB at all. GPT can grow up to 32 TB. So this is the difference between the MBR and GPT, the formats of the disk when you initialize it. In fact, when you are initializing only, you get this option. Once it is initialized, you cannot change this, in fact. So if you are expecting your disk to grow beyond 2 TB, go with the GPT. Always use the GPT for safer side. Maybe going 2 TB in a single drive is not good actually. It won't scale the IO. But in worst case, if you have to keep more data, then you cannot keep it. It cannot grow beyond it. So better to go with always GPT format. When you are asking for the SQL server in the real world also, format the drives in the GPT format, not in the MBR format. The reason being is maybe the drive can extend, beyond that also, certain cases. So in that case, you definitely ask the Windows team to format the disk in a GPT format. We have to instruct them. Fine. So now there are many things anyway we need to consider for the SQL Server to work better. If I come to here, new simple, I'm going to initialize the drive now. I'm going to format the drive. Initialization is done. It is 200 GB capacity drive. It is not showing at the moment. So I'm formatting it now. So here there is one thing, guys. If you are creating for the larger systems, is disk drives, if you are creating or formatting the SQL server, the best recommended allocation unit is 64 kilobytes actually for SQL server. So this goes into different direction, in fact, the discussion. But how exactly SQL server read the data in the form of pages, in the form of extents, in the file groups actually. So on the larger system, requesting every page from the disk IO getting into the memory is a time-taking process to the system. It takes quite a long. On the larger systems or any system for SQL Server, the recommended allocation disk unit is 64 kilobytes. It has to read in the form of 64 kilobytes when it is reading the data. It need little more RAM for operating this, but it gets better performance. In fact, it won't ask for the disk all the time for page by page, where it does not wait for the data to be loaded. Because you request, it'll give it. Request, you give it. So page by page loading into the memory will take a quite long. So it will load the extent by extent when you do this. So this will drastically change the system performance. In fact, on the larger systems, in the smaller systems, you don't see the great difference, but on the larger systems where the data retrieval is more, this makes significant impact on the data performance impact. Okay, so which is fine. All SQL drives you need to format 64 kilobytes only as the recommendation. But anyway, many people don't know that. But if you do so, you get the good performance. I'm going with the default, which is fine. You should do that, in fact, to make you. There are many considerations around SQL Server to get it work better, not just the disk only, not just the this only. So that comes in the performance tuning anyway. Not just the SQL Server can blame it. System also tuned well to make the product to work better. So there are many pinpoints we need to rectify at the OS and also from the infrastructure also. So that system can really scale well with the SQL Server. You need to make the machine ready for that. So now you can see the drives now here, right? So now these drives are actually on this machine made online. If I wanted extended drive for any reason, let's talk about that. So I have the data just for the case. Sample, creating some directories and some data inside in it, just to show that we can migrate the data, we can extend it. When you're extending it, you're not losing anything kind of test. I'm going to create a small file. This is a test file, disk, something. So I'm going to save this. Empty files are not considered as a file. Empty folders also not considered as folders in the cloud. It won't backup when you backup. It has to have at least one file inside the folder. Okay, come on. I'll copy multiple times. I'll tell you why I'm doing all this. There are operations I'm going to do, bad and good. Then we're going to see that how it is going to play around. All right. Now the case is I wanted to
Ravinder,
extend it.
so it is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
so it is costing your billing as well when you are added 4 disks.
Yes, of course, it is an extra cost. It is not included in the VM cost. Storage is separate. You have to pay separately. Disk storage is an additional cost. When it is showing the VM cost, it is showing only the C drive and temporary drive and the operating system and licensing cost. The rest of the storage, whatever you are adding, is an extra cost to the VM. You will see at the end of the month only. You don't see in the beginning or when the VM is operating. When the bill is generated, how much storage you consumed for what server also, they'll mention it in detail in the breaking. You can break down your billing, in fact, by object by object. It will definitely give you this VM is using this much storage, and it is an extra charge for the storage. They'll bifurcate everything and then give you in detail billing anyway. Fine. So now, how do I extend a drive which is running? Adding a drive is an online operation. So when the VM is running, I can add a drive, which is an online operation. But extending a disk, I need to extend. The data is about to fill up. 200 GB is about to fill up. I wanted to extend it. You have to go to here to extend the drive. So if I make this one to 200 to 300, okay. So it is taking the value, but when you are trying to save, oh, is it happening? It's good if they are doing this. You have to deallocate the VM to do this before. Ah, just a few days back I did it in the live also. Maybe it's a good enhancement if they have done. Extension used to be downtime operation, the extending a disk, in fact. But let's see what it says. It is doing this a quite good thing, I can say that.
Ravinder,
Yeah, yeah, go ahead, please.
if it is MBR and someone at the desk as a MBR, but later we
Mm,
required more than 2 TB of space on the drive. So in that
mm,
case, we need to create a new drive and we need to move for example, my log file is running out of space because of growth of the
mm,
database. And L
mm,
drive, for example, it is 2 TB and I got to know that it is MBR. So
mm.
we can create a new drive and moving the files, we need to follow the same process, right?
Yes, 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 of course.
We
That's
can't
what he says.
exchange the MBR to GPT directly.
Correct.
Okay.
So that you have to format it to get the new format. So when you format, you lose it. So you definitely have other drive, migrate it, and once the migration is done, you remove this old drive and rename the old drive to the previous name. That way we have done. We did
Okay.
this, but that is a downtime operation, not online.
That's yes. Yes.
Yeah, Arushi, I couldn't see you join twice. You joined through two different devices.
Yeah, actually, I joined through phone and laptop both. Sometimes one gets disconnected due to some network. Is it
Okay,
fine,
fine.
right?
Yeah, actually, you should join from one. Yeah, if you see that disconnect, then join from two. We'll see. It is
Okay.
taking
Yesterday, actually,
from
the
two.
mute was also not working, the mic, so that's why also I. But I'll disconnect
Yeah,
from one. No, no worries.
it's okay. So now, if you see, guys, it is taking too long. I don't know why. Basically, this was not online operation few days ago itself. Uh, let's see. I mean, why it is taking this long? It should give a message over there that VM need to be deallocated to perform this operation. So see, when I click on this, it is giving a message. When it is giving the message, stay on the same page where you are. If you click it OK, your current operation will fail. It won't go with the operation anymore. So if I clicking on this, it is getting stopped. You see this one, the bar moving here and there. When I stop it, it's starting moving. So certain operations you have to stay in the same page till the operation ended. Okay, you should not go away from that page or blade. We'll call it as a blade, in fact. But anyway, you should not go. So what exactly it is doing this long? It won't extend a disk online. In fact, in production also we will take the downtime, but it is enabled for some reason. It used to be disabled case and used to show a message there that VM need to be deallocated to extend a drive on the VM. It is saved. At the end, it got saved. This in AWS, you can do the online extension. In Azure, we were not having it. Okay, it is done online. The bad thing with
Ravinder, on
yeah,
premise
go ahead.
also we can extend online, right? Disk.
No, you can extend if the data store they have they have the storage. If they don't have it, they have to project it. There, you need a downtime. If they have a
Okay.
storage in the data store, there are two cases in fact. If they don't have
Okay.
a storage in the data store, then they have to add it to the data store, the storage. Then they have to add it to the operating system.
Okay.
But
Fine.
in normal cases, we don't require the downtime to increase the disk space, right?
To increase right now, they did this. It seems like a few days ago itself. I did in the production. We were we always do the downtime. This is a downtime activity. Few days ago. I
Mhm.
actually surprised to see that it is allowing us to do online. So I need to update everyone in my team also, because this is good. But the problem here is, guys, when you do online, it takes quite a long. When you do offline, it get extended so quickly. So quickly means in a few seconds it'll get upgraded to the new storage. So it is taking quite a long. You see this one? It is an online operation, which is good. In fact, they made this in AWS also. We have the same concept. You can extend a disk online. Okay, when you extend online, it takes time to extend the disk. If you have a really good, your server is under critical and storage side, take the downtime and do the extension. And the TBs of drives, if you are doing online, it takes hours to extend itself. So if your disk size is too big, then go with the downtime only. Better. In AWS, we have that. You can do the online extension of the disk, but it takes really long, literally. If you make the VM stopped and then do it, then it does on the fly. It takes a few seconds to get extended. So let me show that also. So online anyway is a recent option they are giving it, which is good in fact. Azure was not allowing us to do. A few days back also we did it. And if I'll check out my subscription, the corporate subscription. Yeah, if it is working here, it should work everywhere, of course. But it is very recent feature. Missed out on this update. Anyway, good enough to see this. So what used to show here is when you do this operation at the top, it will show that you have to deallocate the VM or detach the VM, detach the disk from the VM to extend the drive. It will used to show a message at the top. It's taking too long. In fact, if it is a small drive, it is taking this long. Maybe if it is 1 TB drive, it takes quite a long. Depends on the size. How big the size is, the more time it takes to extend online. In fact, so if you really see that this operation is continuously going on, it is not doing the job, cancel it and then shut down the VM, deallocate the VM and extend it. It happens on the fly. I'll do that next. But doing online is something good. Anyway, this option was not there in the Azure. Small drive should not take this long. In AWS, small drives can be done instantly, but if you have drive more than 1 TB, doing online will take quite a long. There also, the same issue we have there.
Ravinder, Azure portal has a version, right? Or how to see the version?
Version is RM model. You don't have to see the version. It is a resource manager model. We have a classic portal before. Okay.
Okay.
So the portal something what you connect is something it will be auto upgraded. You don't have to worry about. There used to be classic portal, now RM portal. We'll call it resource manager portal. Right now, what we are using. I worked with the classic portal also before this, 2017 before. If you want to create a VM, you have to create the disk separately, you have to create the IP separately, everything separate and join them when you're creating the VM. That used to be very, everything was manual. Now everything is dynamic now with RM portal. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is really taking long time for a single small 100 GB disk, which is not supposed to. Maybe you go with the downtime only for now. It is not matured enough. This feature. See, it took quite a long, in fact, damn long. That should not take in that long. So now, if I go back to the VM, if I stop the VM, understand this. If I'm going to stop the VM to extend the drive, I'm going to stop it. If I stop this, there are two things you need to understand. If it is a dynamic IP, is it a dynamic IP or static IP? It is a static IP. If it is a dynamic IP, if I deallocate the VM, if I stop the VM, it will deallocate the VM. It will stop and deallocate. It does two jobs, in fact. So what does that meaning? I'm going to explain. If I do the stop from here, or I can do the stop from the here also. Like I can select this one, do the stop, either of it. It is same. I'm stopping it. This VM. Do you select the VM? You do the stop from here, or go inside the VM. Stop from inside in it is also same. There is no difference. In fact, click it yes. So when you stop the VM from the portal like that, it first stop the VM. You see the status carefully here. First, it will stop the VM, then it will deallocate the VM. So what exactly the stop and deallocated? Deallocate, when you deallocate the VM, it releases the locks on the disks. Disks will be there around, but it will release the locks on the disk. At the same time, it releases CPU memory back to the cloud. It won't use the CPU memory anymore. And it also releases the IP, machine IP if it is a public, it is a dynamic IP. As it is static, it will not go away. If it is a dynamic IP, okay, if it is dynamic IP, it will get released. So there is a huge difference between the stopped and deallocated. It is still not updated. It is deallocating at the moment. Let that happen. See now, you see there is a stopped state and deallocated state. So just stopped is a different story. Deallocate, stopped and deallocation is another story, in fact. So when you just stop the VM, how do you just stop the VM? I'm going to talk about that. There are two ways to do that. But if you stop from the portal like this, the VM will get deallocated. When the VM is deallocated, it releases the locks on the storage disks. It won't lock the disks. In fact, when you start the VM, it will take the locks on the same disk and it will come online. That's okay. But when you deallocate, it releases the locks on the disk so that I can go and extend it so quickly. So in the previous case, we were extending it. Like I wanted to make this to 100 to 150 GB, the log temp drive. So if I click on this, if I go to the performance, as the VM is deallocated, now changing this value is so quick. If I save it, see, so quick. And then once the disks are extended as required, and then start the VM. So when you're doing online, it took quite a long 4 minutes plus for 100 GB disk. In fact, now when the deallocation is done, when I'm trying to extend a disk, it just run in few seconds, 4 or 5 seconds, maximum 2 or 3 seconds only. It does the job. So if I come back and refresh, it is become 200, 150. Okay, if you wanted to make it to the higher value also, it get extended. Just for the understanding sake, I'm making it to 300. So now I'm making it 150 to 300. Still, it did the job in few seconds. That's what it does when you deallocate. Even in the AWS also same story. If you have a disk space is too big, then you have to stop the VM and do it. That's the best thing. That will do the disk expansion quickly. If not, it takes hours. We cannot sit with the system for hours and do the disk expansion one by one, right? So that way, anyway, this is
So
a
it will
issue.
not cause data loss, right? When you are
No, no,
deallocating.
no data loss. Everything is okay. But down, like when you're doing it, you have to sit it with the system for hour. Who will sit? They need to take the downtime and do it. It takes hours. You have 4 drives, 1 TB. To extend the 4 drives, you will take 4 hours. As a Windows guy, who will spend 4 hours on a single server? So they'll take a downtime, in fact. Fine. Now I'm going to start it. When you start it, either you start from here, or it is visible by. Okay, it should not visible from here also. Right. So now I'm going to start it. So there is one more option, guys. I wanted to discuss when this is deallocated itself. You can change the disk performance tier also. You can extend a disk. If I go to the disk here, it is SSD, standard hard disk. You can change it. You can change the disk performance tier at any time. Why do you have to change a disk performance tier? Because current disk is not scaling with the workload. How do I say it is not scaling? I was talking about it. Go into the activity monitor, checking the disk response time. If the disk response time is more than 20, below 10 is good, very good. In fact, up to 20 is okay, just okay. Going beyond 20 milliseconds per second when it is reading, then your disk is not up to the mark. I mean, the kind of operations what it is receiving and what it is reading out the data is not actually supporting. In fact, there you have to scale your storage tier from standard hard disk to standard solid state disk. Okay, so I'm saving it. In this case also, let me do that online after this. So it so quickly it is converted your disk into um, I did it save, right, I guess. So if I come back here, the disk was under standard hard disk state. Now if I refresh, it turned to standard solid state disk. You can change the disk tiers on the fly. It is possible. To save the cost, we will run the non-critical production servers under standard hard disk. But you see that queue is developing. The response time of the disk is going higher and higher. Then you definitely should think of changing the disk performance tier from standard hard disk to standard solid state disk, so that it will improve the IO capacity of the disk. In fact, okay. So now I'm going to start the VM. So what is the basic difference? Oh, come on, I would have done one thing. Forgot to do. When you deallocate a machine, when you stop from the portal, when you deallocate a machine, the data within the temp drive will be lost. Whatever you have it, it will wipe out the data from the disk. I'll show you it once again. That is also another important point they might pinpoint in the interview. So Let's do that. If it is not loading the RDP, which means it is still taking time to come online. Refresh, it is running. Okay, then right, fine. So now, if you come back to the VM, the disks, whatever you extended, it won't show up instantly. You have to extend it manually. So the disks, you can see that it is 200 capacity, 100 capacity, 100, and it is, I made this one to 300 again, but they are not showing up. So how do you extend them? You have to extend them manually from the computer management, go to the disk management. From there, you can extend it. So if you are really working for the longer in the cloud, you don't need infrastructure guy help to extend a disk. We can do ourselves. So we do it in
Ravinder,
our environment.
previously you
Go
were
ahead.
saying like here if we have space, then we can extend without downtime. You are referring here only, right? Suppose I extended 1 TB previously when VM was shut down. Now I extend first time I extended only 500 GB. Later I can extend 500 GB without downtime.
No, anytime you can do without a downtime. The problem is the time going to take, it is quite a long, right? So that is not good. So if you
Okay.
have a bigger the size, the longer the time it takes to extend in the portal. So to get it instantly done, you have to deallocate the VM and extend the drive. So it does a quickly that extension of the storage.
No.
So
Previously when on-premise also we are extending this without online, without offline, right? You are referring data store means here only
oh no
in
no no
VM
no.
level.
Right, actually in the data store which are connected to the VM, in fact, the LUNs where they're projected, they are connected logically to the VM, right? So the LUNs are
Mm.
the storage within the LUNs are exhausted. They have to project a
Okay.
new LUNs, new
Okay.
storage, new logical storage given to the ESX host, in fact, in the background to claim.
Okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
that time they need to add it. That is a different operation.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
So now if you look at this, guys, I extended the storage in the portal. Now whatever the storage I extended in the portal, I can see that in each drive. So I have to go to here, extend the volume. You have to extend it to make that extended volume is claimed. So you see this, it became 300. Now this will become 200. It will becomes 200 because 100 to another 100 we are adding it. So as you are adding it up, you can see the storage is changing here, in fact. So this way you have to extend a drive. But the problem, it is good actually that it is allowing us to do online. It is just just a new feature, absolutely, which is damn good. If they are doing us, allowing us at least to do this, which one got extended? This one, fine.
But that is not recommendable as like it will take a lot of time to add the database space there.
Right, actually, if you have a really big drive, then you have to go with the downtime only. Better. Let's go with it.
Yeah.
You better approach downtime and then get it extended. Why? Because of we have just seen that extending it as disk was taking quite a long, which is not
Mhm.
like the Windows person also need to sit with that disk server and then work for hours. No one does that. So if I wanted to this drive, so now let's see the changing the performance tier also, how long it takes. So you have seen that I was changing the disk performance tier from the standard hard disk to standard solid state disk, and when this was deallocated, okay, it was done so quickly. But if I'm trying to do on this one when it is online, let me check. I did not do this before. I mean, a few days ago itself, it used to be offline operation. Now they are allowing to do us. Let's check this out also. Right. So what it is saying, cannot change the account type, full domain name, network space. The heck it is saying? Just a minute. Failed to update the disk. Cannot change account type, fault domain, network spine. Disk. It is attached to the VM. So it is saying that you cannot change the disk performance tier when it is attached to a VM. In fact, this is required actually a downtime in that case. They are not allowing at least this one. So if I come back again, understand this. This is very important, in fact. So changing the disk performance here, because it is not scaling it, I'm trying to change from the standard hard disk to standard solid state disk. I'm saving it. It is giving the error. When the disk is attached, you cannot change it. This is not online yet, actually. In AWS, this is also online, which is good. But here they only, gave you the online option for extending a disk, not changing the performance of a disk tier. Not yet. They will do this also very quickly then. Very soon they are going to do, but they have not done yet. So if I wanted to change the disk performance tier, I need to have a downtime. It is definite downtime. Extension of disk may be online, it takes time, but changing the disk performance tier is definitely needed downtime. Sorry. You guys following, right? What I'm trying to say?
But
Yes,
how
yes.
first one it's extended from
When it
HDD to
was,
SSD?
I did when this was stopped. This one.
Okay, okay, okay.
One more thing. Let's do it. Let's do it. So what I am going to show you is, so I have some data in temporary drive. Okay. And if I come here, if I load the data here, user data, this is all the user data. There are only two files which are system data here in this. So if you keep anything in the temporary drive, if you deallocate a VM, then what happens? So I'm going to stop the VM quickly. So one thing, guys, when you stop and deallocate a VM, it does three things. In fact, releasing the CPU memory back to the cloud. It won't hold the lock. And second thing is, it will release the public IP if it is dynamic. It releases the public IP if it is dynamic on the machine. It is a static, in fact, as of now. Okay. Third thing is, when you deallocate the machine, then you can change the disk tiers. Else you cannot change it. This performance tier as of now. Even you cannot extend the disk also before. Yeah, someone have a question?
How you get to know if it is a static or a dynamic IP?
Good question. So you click on the IP. Here it'll be written static or dynamic when you click on the IP.
Okay.
Just
Ravindra,
on the V.
usually it will be static or dynamic.
It used to come with the dynamic before.
Real
Now
time.
they made it static. But I can
Okay.
create one more VM. I'll show you that dynamic IP how you can claim if you want. I'll show it in the next VM. So for
Okay.
now, this VM is still running. And it stopped, right? Right, it stopped and deallocated. So if you stop and deallocate a VM, you have to answer this. This will be most frequent question in the interview. What is the difference between the stopped and deallocation? When you stop a VM, it does not release anything from the VM. Everything will be intact. You are paying 100% bill to the VM. When the VM is stopped and deallocated, you don't have to pay the money to the computing charges. So 80% of the VM cost is computing charges only. 90%, 80 to 90%. You don't have to pay the operating system licensing cost. You don't have to pay the CPU memory cost. Okay, these two are the major contributors of the VM cost. In fact, when you deallocate, when do we have to deallocate? When you have to destroy the VM, when you have to decommission the VM, we will keep the server under deallocation mode for 14 days. That is a policy we have in our company. So for 14 days at least you are saving 80% of the VM bill. 80%. Okay. So because you cannot abruptly decommission the server, right? You have to shut down if no one is complaining, then we go and delete the VM kind of. So when you have to decommission the server, you have to use this one. In fact, deallocation mode to save the cost of the VM. So anyway, if I wanted to go and change the disk performance tier of the disk now, like I was doing in the previous case, so I'll change to this one, standard hard disk to standard solid state disk. You see the standard hard disk here. I'm going to change this one to standard solid state disk here. Let it the storage as is. I'm changing it. Now it is doing the job. So which means you have to deallocate the VM for changing the disk performance tier. Still it is there. Basically extending is also used to be a downtime operation, but they are allowing. Just it seems few days ago this feature got added. Anyway, anyway on the larger disk you cannot do online anyway. It takes quite a long. You should go with the downtime only. It's not too long downtime anyway. You have to make 1 TB to 4 TB also. If you make down, if you shut down the VM and deallocate the VM and do the extension for 2 TB to 4 TB, it just happens within seconds, not even a minute. You're extending 2 TB to 4 TB, double the storage of that big drive. Still, it happens 4 to 5 seconds only. That's fast it is. If you do 2 TB storage online in AWS also, it takes hours to get that new storage reflected. So better to take downtime on the larger disk. Okay, that is experience I am facing in the AWS also. Anyway, so now what I'm going to do, I loaded some data in the temp drive. You have seen that. Now I'm going to start it. You can start it from here, or else you can just select the VM and start. Either of it is same. Right, let it get online. Right. So when this is done, it is still saying unknown. Sometimes this status won't get updated instantly. You have to go inside the VM and look this status. This status is final. What do you see here? So now I'm going to connect to the VM again. Every operation what I'm doing is very important, guys. You have to explore it because this is what you had to know when you work in the real time, how the things work, in fact. So if I come here and check that, oh, sorry, I have to check on the temp drive, right? So if I go to here, on the temporary drive, I was copied some data, so all got lost. They wipe out. So if you lose any data from the temporary drive, Microsoft also will not support. They clearly mention on all the notes everywhere, don't keep any valuable or user valuable data in temp drive. If you deallocate a VM for any reason, when you deallocate only, not because of the restart, it won't lose your data. If you restart, you shut down, you don't lose the data. Only when you deallocate a VM, the data from the temporary drive will be gone. It won't be there. It'll just be, you lose the data as simple as it is from that drive. It'll create the
So it
mess
is
if you.
it is applicable for C drive as well because it is attaching to a VM C and D.
No. Only temporary drive I'm talking right now. These are all attached physical storage. This is a free drive they have given for as a caching drive, in fact, for a VM. Only I'm talking about temporary drive. You don't lose any data in any of the other drives. Temporary drive only what I'm trying to talk will apply. Okay, is it clear? Right.
You said
So, mhm. Yeah, please go ahead, please.
that C and D is attaching to VM. So whatever you have saved on that, it will be a loss if you are deallocating
No, no,
the
no, no,
VM,
no,
right?
no, no. Everything is attached to a VM, including other drives also. This is a drive which comes by default with the machine along with the C drive. C drive data, you don't lose anything. This is a temporary drive. The only temporary drive will you will lose the data if you deallocate. All will remain intact. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's move to a different topic. Okay, fine.
Ravinder,
So
you said you will show only to stop the VM without deallocation. Okay.
okay, fine. So if you just want to stop the VM, you have to shut down within the VM. Two cases. There are two cases we can do it. I can go to here. I can shut down the VM. If I just do the shutting down the VM within the VM, it will just stop. When the VM is stopped, you have to pay the full charges of the VM. There is no exemption. You have to pay 100% charges of the VM. You don't the locks won't be released on the storage, and public IP or dynamic IP is still intact, and you will have the CPU memory also attached to the VM. So you don't lose. I mean, you don't. It takes, when you just shut down, it will be quick compared to stop run deallocation. So it is stopped. It is quick, in fact. So it is showing us running, but it is stopped. You can check within the VM also. All right. When it is stopped, you have to pay 100% bill of the VM. If you stopped and deallocated, you don't have to pay. Whenever we have to decommission the server, we always deallocate the VM. In the portal, we'll come and stop it, keep it for 2 weeks as per the SLA, and then destroy it, kind of. That way it is. Okay. So now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly start this anyway. Let's go with the large backup. You have very big backup. Assume a case. I wanted to migrate the backup one VM to other VM. What is the best approach? What is the easiest and less time taking process? We'll follow it, the shortcuts. So let this come online. Now you all understood, right? What is deallocation? Yes or no? So there is one more thing you need to understand, guys. If I come to here disk, this is supporting only 4 drives. See, 4 of 4. I cannot create any more new drive. How do I say that this supporting only 4 drives? When you're creating the VM itself, you get to know about it. Someone have a question? Please speak up if you have a question. So now if I come to here, SQL VM02 quickly about this also important information. VM02 is there 3. So now if I come back to here and the size, what is a VM I created? 2 CPUs, 4 GB RAM. How many disks it can support? 4 drives on. It is written. What is a temp drive I'm going to get? 8 GB temporary drive. I'm going to get it. If I go with the higher side, 4 CPUs to 16 GB RAM, I can create 8 disks on the VM, not for 8 disks. And each drive, it can be extended up to 32 TB in the cloud. One drive can be extended if it is a GPT format. I mean, even if it is MBR format also, in the cloud, you can extend up to 32 TB. That is a limitation. That you cannot go beyond it. But if the disk is formatted in the MBR format, you cannot go beyond 2 TB, though you extend in the portal beyond 4 TB or 2 TB. That is there. So you have to be careful about that side. So the number of drives, the temporary storage, what it is giving, actually varies actually. So what we do here, how we are leveraging this temporary drive to get used for SQL Server TempDB. TempDB will recreate it every time SQL Server starts, right? If the VM is also restarted, the SQL Server also will get restarted. So it will recreate the files all the time. It's okay. So temporary drive is actually ultra premium storage because it is acting like a RAM for the VM. It is giving the buffer memory for the VM. That's why they are giving it free of cost, a small amount of this, small only anyway, for this cost of the VM. It will be high only. You can see the VM cost here when you're creating itself, which is equivalent to 10,255 rupees per month only for the VM cost, not the additional storage. Whatever the disk you're going to create on top of the VM is an extra cost. This cost is only giving you the operating system cost, computing charges, all that. Public IP, if you have it, public IP cost also separately they will bill you. It will not include in this cost, public IP. So everything comes at the cost. Nothing comes at free. Okay. So this thing you have to keep in mind. Depends on the size of the VM. Depends on the size of the VM. The number of disk it can support will vary, and each disk can grow up to 32 TB in the cloud maximum. If it is a GPT formatted drive, you can claim that. If it is MBR, you cannot claim that. That also there. And one more thing, right? Someone asking about dynamic and static, right? Let's talk about that side quickly. how you can create a dynamic public IP if you wanted. So generally static is good. We don't keep the public IPs on the database server state at all. That I'm going to cover as a standard anyway. So if I come to here, there is an IP assignment, public IP assignment. You click on this, it is by default going with the static. Oh, they are not even letting us to select. Oh, when availability zones are supported in the standard SKU only. Okay, that is the reason it is going. Which is okay, which is good actually. In fact, this used to be dynamic before. Many things are changing time to time. Zone redundant, still it is not. Mhm. If I change this to West India, there are no zone concept in West India. There you can select the dynamic IP quickly. Let me change that region because West India does not have the zone concept. If I come here, okay, now if I go to the VM networking model, here I can select the dynamic IP. Right here, it is dynamic IP. If the VM has this kind of dynamic IP, then if you deallocate the VM, you lose the public IP. It will deallocate the public IP also when you deallocate the VM. It will detach the CPU memory from the VM. It will deallocate the public IP if it is dynamic, right? These two things will be done when you deallocate it. So keep in mind, this is very important point people might ask in the interview.
Can
So
you
when you
repeat
deallocate,
this deallocate public and this static one?
if it is static, as long as you are not deleting the VM object, it will be there with the VM. It is static, it is attached. If it is dynamic, public IP is dynamic. If you deallocate the VM, the public IP will be lost from the VM. It won't be there. If you want me to show, I can create a VM. I can do that. I am submitting this VM to show that. So West India, see that in Central India, the VM cost was 3 rupees 80 paisa. The same VM in West India is costing me more. So every region will have its own costing model for the same services. It is always demand and supply. Every time, every region, the same service will be, the charges will be different in the AWS also, in Azure also, in the Google Cloud also. Everywhere the concept is same. So the charges of the VM region to region will change. Not just the VM, every service in fact. In India, Central India is the best choice for anyone to go with the higher resource side. It is cheaper compared to other two regions, South India and West India, Central India. Fine, anyway. So, any question? Right. So if I wanted to move a drive from one machine to other machine for some reason, what do we have? Why do we have to move? First question. When you have a huge backup, I have a very big backup in TBs. I wanted to migrate the data from one machine to other machine. Moving like that is a very expensive operation through the storage account. There is a shortcut for it. We use it. I'll tell you. Tomorrow I'll cover all the scenarios anyway, big scenarios. Today, try to understand the basics about the VM. This is all understanding will help you how you manage the VM inside the Azure portal. So now if you look at this one, I have the lot of data here. Okay, someone is not on mute, go on mute. Yeah, Archana, I guess. Archana, can you go on mute if you don't have question? Yeah, because it is recording, so fine. So now I have some data here. I wanted to migrate this disk drive data into the other server. We created other server here. This is SQL VM02. So I wanted to migrate that disk. Migrate in the sense copy paste kind of thing. How do I do that if I have to do? So let's do that. Either one more option is the best easiest way is taking the snapshot. Moving is a long running operation. Better the shortest method for doing so. So what you have to do? You create a new drive. So I have a 2 TB or 10 TB backup in this machine, I have to refresh in pre-prod. Moving 10 TB backup one VM to other VM is a really time-taking process. So what do we do as a shortcut when they do ask such kind of thing on the larger systems? We have 18 TB database in the cloud in the VM. So to refresh 18 TB database for any functionality testing is a really headache process. So we are following a different method to make things easy. What do? We create a separate drive for that backup capture. Okay. Now consider this as a backup drive now. Okay. Consider this as a backup drive. Okay. Then I'm going to migrate this drive entirely from here to there, this VM to that VM. So what I'm going to do, first I'll come to here in this VM. I'm going to detach the VM. I took entire backup in the drive. Assume a case that way. I'm going to detach this VM from this VM. So it is online operation. You can detach. Just click on the cross symbol. It is detached from the VM. Okay, this one. I captured all the backup that has a big, the big sizes, and then I'm going to detach this drive. The drive attached to the VM only for the backup purpose. I'm detaching once the backup is done. So then you have to go to the disk service here. I'll cover the image
Where
service tomorrow anyway.
where you took the backup of this drive? I didn't see that one.
I didn't take the backup of the drive, but I took the backup from the within the VM in that drive. I captured the
In some
backups in
other
that drive.
drive, you copy pasted.
You think that way here? I already have 4 drives here, which like let me show you just a minute. So here I had a drive. Okay, this is a drive. Assume a case. You took all the backups in the drive. It's an additional drive for you. You created for that backup purpose. You took all the backups on the production and detach the drive, attach on the pre-prod, and then restore straight away. That way we can easily do it. So it is a drive you captured, you connected to SQL Server, you generated all the backups here. Now the backups are loaded into the local drive. This drive, what I'm going to do, I'm going to detach from the production server, attach on the target. When you're detaching, you have to be careful. That must be a backup drive only. So now if I come back to the disk storage, there is a drive. There is a drive which is a data drive which without a owner. When you detach a drive, it will release the ownership on the drive because you detached from the VM completely. When it doesn't have a owner, you can claim this disk in any of the server, in any of the server. In fact, this is called migrating a disk from one server to other server in the cloud. So now I'm going to claim this drive on the VM02. This way you can migrate petabytes of backup also. I mean, not to go through the blob. If you can ship the backup through blob also. I'm going to show that. That is a generic standard process, but going through that will take hours and hours. So this is a shortcut method. We use it, not Microsoft recommended it, but anyway we are using it as a best quick action. So on the VM02 on the disk, sorry, the disk here, we have only one disk, the operating system drive. That's it. So you can see here only one drive. Don't count this as a drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach existing disk which does not have an owner. You will find here. Select that and save it. The same drive will be appeared on the pre-prod server, what the backup you captured anyway. So now it is already formatted drive. It will come with a formatted directly attached, and you see all the backups here like this, and you restore one by one. It will make your job so quick, right? When you can get this directly, you can directly restore straight away. So moving the data become easy for you. No need to transfer through the network, in fact, now,
So
because
you
you take
chose
into
the
here.
another. So you chose
uh
another VM and then added the disk, right? So
Right,
you
correct.
you are using two VMs. Okay, okay.
Right. I'm using two VMs, and the source VM was this. Here I attached here. So if any drive you don't want for some reason, I don't want a disk. Removing a disk is an online operation. Adding a disk is an online operation. Even extending a disk is also online operation now. Now it was not before few days itself. Now it is online. but depends on the size of the VM. You have to go with the downtime or not downtime. Anyway, so I don't want this drive for some reason. I can remove the drive, detach the drive on when the VM is on. In fact, you don't have to take the downtime. So how do I get that? Even if I detach, also I'll have to pay the charges of the disk. In fact, because it is still lying around. So I have to delete that from the disk service. Then you get rid of that storage. In fact, to decommissioning the disk, in fact, you have to take the ownership from the disk, like detaching it. Once it get detached, you have to delete it. So here you lose the ownership here. Now I'll go to here, I'll delete the drive. You have to do this manually. Okay. Then the disk will be gone. Now the charges will be avoided on the free drives. I guess you guys following.
So detach, attach, and deleting is online operation.
Right, right. Extending a disk is not online. It is also online, good enough now. But the size of the you have to answer that way. If the size of the disk is too big, then we are following the downtime only, because extending online is taking quite a long, and doing, like if we have to extend multiple drives, it takes the entire day for the larger disk. So which is not something people afford to do that kind of work. So we are going through the downtime operational. You have to explain them. That's what we do it in our environment on the AWS also. So the same concept they introduced in the Azure very recently. Even 15 days back, we extended in the Azure cloud. It was not allowing. We took the downtime and then we extended it. We know that that is a standard process. So now it's good that it is online. Something good, in fact. They added uh, something good advantage, right? So now, as I created a VM, you don't have to create the VM and then attach the disk all the time. You can attach the disk when you are creating it also. Quickly. Okay, I'll create one more VM. So you should know all these possibilities. VM04. Let it be John as is. So size is 2 CB, 4 GB RAM, which is fine. We don't have to do this in the real time. I'll conclude tomorrow. We will create our own templates, ready-made templates. Use the template to build the VM all the time, and that templates will get you whatever you wanted to have on the VM. In fact, so in the disk section, okay, if it is a pre-prod, go with the standard hard disk. For the operating system drive also, okay, for the operating system drive also, go with the standard hard disk only. For production operating system drive, must be standard solid state disk only. Premium is good, in fact, for operating system. By default it is premium. What is advantage the premium SSD for the operating system? When you restart the machine, it gets restarted so quickly. Someone on mute, please. Please be on mute if you are not speaking. Why? Because it is recording every sound. So now, if you look at this, guys, this point is important again. Why we need to keep OS disk and the production premium SSDs only? The better the disk it can give you input output operation, the better it can reboot quickly. If I keep the server under standard hard disk, if I reboot, it takes quite a long, because IO is slow to support to load the operating system from the drive. It takes time to get loaded and then come online. If you keep under premium SSD drive for the production, for the C drive, it will reboot so quickly within a minute. Within a minute it will reboot, because the operating system, the boot process, it will go fast, because it is reading the files fast from the disk. That's the reason in the production environment, the operating system drive should go into the premium only as the best standard. For data drives, you have to go with the standard solid state disk, not the premium. If the standard solid state disk is not scaling, then you have to go to the premium. In a worst case, very rarely we go with the premium SSDs. That too, you have to get the client approval. If I'm paying, example, if I'm paying here a VM, example, assume a case $100, I'm paying it. If I go to here, standard hard disk to standard solid state disk, the VM cost will go to $140 to $150. $100 VM, because of the storage, it will go to $140 to $150. If I go to here, absolutely more than the $200, double the cost. just because of the storage. That is the reason you have to be definitely take the approval from the client. Moving to the premium standard is okay. We have approval, pre-approval. If your disk is developing a lot of queues, like a disk queue length, we will find the read-write latency in the using the DMVs. I'll share the DMVs if wanted. We can see that how your disk is doing through the SQL query also, not just activity monitor. We can see that disk writes are developing, queue length is developing. Then you have to think of definitely scaling up a disk to give you a better performance. You have a good system, you have good indexes and everything, but the disk itself is not supporting for reading out the data out of the disk. So you cannot do anything in that case. You're extending the disk capacity, the read write capacity. That is anyway fine. Adding the disk. How many disk you can add it? 4 drives based on the size I have chosen. 2 CPUs, 4 GB RAM. So I can go to here. When I'm creating the VM itself, I can choose it. By default, every drive will come with a 1 TB premium SSD. You should not do that. According to the need, you go with it. So I'll go to here. I'll go to the standard hard disk and then make whatever size you wanted. In fact, right? It's one disk. I'm adding it now. I'm going to create one more disk like this. So it should be data log drive. You have to name it, label it correctly to work with it. So now I'm going to go here again. All the time it goes with the premium SSD only. You have to be careful on that side and change it when you're creating a drive. When you are creating the VM itself, we are attaching the drives. So create here also. So here also I'll go with the temp drive just for the case. Maybe 100 GB. Okay, fine. Creating it. So we are adding 3 drives on top of the VM when we are creating the VM itself. Okay. Then networking, I'll talk about in detail every option that we have here. Don't worry. I'm creating the VM. Right. These drives will come on the VM without the initialization. You have to initialize, you have to format, and then make them disks online anyway. That is the one thing. And one more thing here is how do you stop the VM? Just stop the VM within the portal. This is also a usual question people do ask. One way I already have shown. Shutting down the VM within the VM will stop the VM. But if I wanted to stop the VM, do I have to get into the VM all the time? You don't have to. So go to the VM, which VM you wanted to stop. Go to the serial console. There is a console from here. Right. If I go and type help, I'll get a lot of options here. In fact, so we generally shut down. We don't use other options as a DBA. That's enough. Shut down. I'm going to shut down. Okay. If I shut down the server within the serial console of the VM, then this VM will get shut down. It will get stopped. It will reflect in a while. So it stopped so quick because you are doing on the VM console itself. It is so quick to stop the VM. So this is also a question they might ask you. How do you stop the cloud Azure VM, without getting into the server? You can go to the portal, you can click on the server, click on the serial console. From there, you can shut down the server. You have to tell the entire navigation process if someone asking you. Okay. So we have seen we create a VM, we attach the drives online, and we extended the drive online, offline. We have seen that how do you change the disk storage tiers. We have seen how do you migrate a drive from one server to other server. We know what is temp drive now on the VM, right? What is a temp drive? It is a temporary drive. It will get wiped out every time you deallocate the VM. And we know that if it is a VM IP is dynamic, or this VM IP is dynamic, right? We click quickly to this. If you look at this, it is dynamic. This IP is dynamic. I can see this. If I deallocate this VM, if I stop this VM, so this is IP, you see this one, it will become empty when you let me take into notepad quickly. So I'm going to stop this VM. It will remove that IP anyway. So it is gone. You don't have the IP anymore here. You click on this IP will be gone. It's not showing yet. It should show the IP here. In fact, you still see the IP here, but it'll be empty when it is completely deallocated. It's still showing it. Right, it is deallocated. If you click on this IP will be, why it is showing here? 148. It will get renewed anyway. Right, it is gone. It is empty. See. So when you deallocate a VM, it releases CPU memory back to the cloud, and also it will deallocate the public IP if it is dynamic condition. If it is dynamic, this way. Anyway, you don't keep the public IPs and the database servers at all. We don't keep it because public IPs are hackable. I mean, it is exposed to the public world. So you should not run database servers with the public IPs. You should run only in the private IPs. That I'm going to cover in the networking anyway. How you can keep the servers in a secure mode. Right, this VM we created with the drives, right? What required drives, and you have to practice here on what's guys what I'm covering. You can start creating a subscription because every day we're going to do a lot of practicals. So tomorrow we will cover templates. How do you build your own templates to build the VMs with all the standards? And you delete a VM accidentally, how do you recover it? Right, how you can recover the VM from the hung status, and how you monitor the Windows server, with all the metrics. Right, there are many things going to be covered. Tomorrow is very important. If you know this side, as a product guy, you understand the situation. You can act to the situation. At least if you're not doing it, maybe your infrastructure is doing everything on the VM side. Some cases you can instruct them. That's where your potential can be showed up. So one thing, I'll tell you one more thing. Let this finish. What I'm trying to. So we built a server production to pre-prod using the disk snapshots. I'll try to go 8 minutes only. We'll see. If not today, we'll cover that tomorrow anyway. So taking the disk snapshot and building the data out of the disk snapshot. So now we added 3 drives and they are not actually initialized. So it is by default going with the GPT. Go with the GPT only, I would recommend. Okay, which is fine. And then you know that next process, just you hit next, it will get you the disks here, right? So we can add the disk when we are creating the VM. You can add the disk after creating the VM, and adding a disk anyway is online operation at any point of time. You don't want a disk after a while, particular disk, you can detach and delete it to reduce the cost of the storage. For any reason you created a drive temporarily, the temporary purpose is done. So as I was saying, I took the VM backup, the SQL database backup into one drive, detached and attached on the target. A restore is done. What is the purpose of the drive? Detach from that VM and destroy it. Again, you might need it again. You provision the new drive again. That period, how long you are keeping the drive there in the background, that period only you'll get the charge. So you're going to save the money there. Don't keep any drive without a use, because even you're using or not using, Microsoft will keep you bill for that. So you have to be careful around it. Okay. In 7 minutes, let's try to cover a disk snapshot.
Ravinder, you also had to tell how to like destroy other things like which you were mentioning, right? Or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the disks?
No. I'm going to destroy everything that at the end. We have still time. I'm going to take this 7,
Okay.
8 minutes time also. So this is which VM in fact. How do I know which VM actually? When you connect it through the IP, you go to this server manager, click on the local server. This will tell you the VM name, SQL VM 02. In fact, only one drive. And this one, We just created this server. Fine. So I'll go to the first server then. This server has more, so to stop, I'll start this. Yeah, it takes some time to build. Let's cover that tomorrow then. Maybe I don't want to cover that in rush because that is also important operation in fact. So how do you destroy everything? I'll cover that, don't worry. This taking the snapshot means copy pasting the disk, not cut paste. What we have seen, detach attach is a cut paste equivalent. But I wanted the drive to be there in the source and target also with all the data. That is a snapshot method. We're going to see that tomorrow. I'll cover that. So when you create too many services within the resource group, everything goes into resource group. If I click on the resource group here, all the VMs are what I have created, here it is created, everything under one resource group. If I go to here, this was a previous resource group, it does not hold anything except this vault. What is vault? We will see it in the future class. Networking watcher. This also I'll cover. Each region you create. So each region, one networker watcher service will be created. What exactly it is? It is for the Microsoft, not for you. So you are creating resources within the Microsoft infrastructure. The server is listening with a private IP. Every server by default will have a private IP also. So they will see the health of this private IP. There is a private IP. You should have it. Why it is not showing? Started right. Come to the networking at least. You'll find the private IP. See, this is a network IP it is listening. NIC card. It has a separate card and there is an IP associated. If the internal networking cables are broken, they are not communicating, any issues are with the internal network, they'll get the alert. How do they get the alert? With the help of this service. This service, they monitor the internal network. You should not delete it. If you delete also, there is no harm, but Microsoft cannot monitor your network. If something goes wrong, you cannot escalate on them. If this is there, they get the alerts, automated alerts. Some link is broken between this server to that server. There are links that is communicating through the links. So if anything is not working, they can monitor through the tools, and you are making them blind if you are deleting this. Your production will not have any impact, but Microsoft cannot support internal network health if you delete this. Keep them online in the real time. In the real time we don't delete, keep it as it is, but here we will delete everything. I'll click on the resource group, delete resource group, just check the resource group name and delete. That's it. It will delete everything what you created. If I go to here also, it has a lot of all the VMs I created. I just go to the delete resource group and delete the resource group. This you never do in the real time, only in your personal subscription. Don't ever do this. It is equivalent to your data center one resource group equivalent to. Anyway, you can log the resources, you can log the resource group that I'm going to cover tomorrow. How you protect the resources not to get deleted accidentally. That comes in the tomorrow class anyway. Tomorrow class will cover a lot of big scenarios. So just be there, because in one class we cannot cover every scenario, right? But today's discussion also equally important, of course. But tomorrow we'll go towards like most of the scenario side. So this way you can clean up actually. Okay, you create whatever you create and destroy the resource group. All the time this resource group should be empty. If your resource group is empty, then you don't have any service around. As simple as it is. When you click on the resource group, if it is showing empty, you don't have anything. It will clean up. It takes some time to destroy everything, but it get cleaned up. So this is gone. First one is gone. You see this one? Network watcher, that is gone. And this will also will go away. This will stay back. There is a reason behind. This will is sticky service. We'll talk about this why this won't get deleted. There is a reason, and even it get won't deleted also. You don't get a charge. How you make it without a charge also? We're going to talk about that. Service is different service in fact altogether. So this is all for today. Please create your subscription. Start doing along with me here onwards. One thing, good. Stay back, everyone, stay back. I'm stopping this.